Welcome to the Sorch podcast, where we explore Sikh and wider South Asian history, art and philosophy with historians, artists and researchers. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Inder Singh Bassi, who is a 24-year-old professional boxer signed to MTK Global. He's a 6-time London champion, a 3-time national finalist and a Haringey gold medalist as an amateur boxer. In total, you've had 70 amateur fights and 3 national fights, which have ended with 2 wins and a loss. And you've been pivotal in helping to overturn what is known as the beard rule within the UK, which didn't allow amateur boxers to compete with beards. Now, before we start with your journey into boxing and where you are now, I just want to start with getting to know more about you and your family background. It's always interesting to hear how we as second or third generation have ended up where we are. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so boxing, how did I get into it? So when my granddad actually come over from India back in the 60s, I think, obviously back then the most famous fighter in the world and like a guy who done a lot in the ring and a lot out of the ring was Muhammed Ali, who was also before, back then he was known as Cassius Clay. And my granddad, obviously, back in India, they used to play kabaddi, they used to wrestle. I come from a family, they used to wrestle back in India, but no one boxed, no one knew what boxing was until my granddad come in and, you know, he watched Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, and it was like, wow, I want to do this too. You know, he come from a training family, he's always been training. So he thought, let me try boxing. And then he done amateur boxing back in the 60s. And then, yeah, so from him, well, obviously he only stuck to amateur. You know, back then it was different. They had jobs that to provide for families back home in India and try and set up a new life here. So he had amateur fights, about 15, 20 fights. Obviously my dad and my dad boxed. My dad was also like a London champion back in the 70s, 80s, whatever, 90s, 80s, I think, yeah. And then one of my uncles, he's a dyer, but not my sucker dyer. He's actually currently an Olympic referee for boxing. So it's always been in my family. So for my granddad boxing, and then obviously me and my brothers, we all done boxing. I'm just the first one to become professional.
Oh, wow. So are your brothers also in amateur boxing and are looking to go professional as well?
No, not now. So obviously I say young brother, he's 19 now. So they all done it to a certain level. But they've obviously so one's at uni, one's still at college. So no, they're not really looking to go professional, but they've all done it to a certain degree. You know what I mean? They've all trained.
No, fair enough. So with that as your family background, was it always like, oh, one of you is going to turn professional? Kind of like, was it like an objective from the beginning?
Yes. And I mean, what it is, there's been a couple Sikh fighters, you know, even the professional ranks, but they weren't really like practicing, you know, kesdhari or there's been no Amritari Sikhs, whatever. It was always, whether it won't be me, my family always wanted to see a professional up and a boxer. Whether it was me or somebody else, it was always a goal, you know, at least one who's a professional fighter, and hopefully he goes all the way, do you know what I mean? It wasn't just limited to my family. They wanted anybody, you know. We run a kids club at the gurdwara where we teach kids boxing, wrestling and kabaddi, and we give them the basics, we give them the foundations, and then from then they go on a club. And it's not just limited so one of us can become a professional. It's we hope for one of them and the kids from the Gurdwara. You know, we teach 40, 50 kids. Hopefully one of them can grow up and he can go down the amateur path and then turn professional. But it was you know, it was always a goal for one of my family. You know, we would like to see a professional. That was me. Do you know what I mean? Thankfully, God gave me the opportunity, so I took it.
To be honest, whilst you were saying that, I was smiling because I remember when I came across you in a kind of a similar vein in that someone had posted, I think it was maybe after like your second professional fight. And similarly, I was like, oh, wow, it's a Singh. Like, let's be blunt about it. I was like, he looks like me. This is amazing. And I guess it's similar to, I think it was Mist and Steel Bangles did a song with Sidhu in UK, and like,
yeah, definitely, it's the exact same thing.
And it's seeing a Singh and you go like, and I remember posting about that, going, irrespective of what they're doing and like what kind of field you're in, just seeing that, it's just awesome. So no, I have to say proverbial hats off to you because I think you're doing a great job. And equally, I think it's a great role model for other young people growing up.
Really important, yeah, because like I said, when you're young as well, even more so, you can, I'm not saying people look up to me, you know, far from it. If tomorrow we do have another professional boxer who's a world champion, is a thing, I'm going to look up to him. Kids are going to look up to him. And that is very important because some kids, they don't grow up in an area where there's many up there. For example, they might grow up in an area which is predominantly, say English. Somebody they can look up to who's out of their family circle, out of their friendship group, and he's older and he's doing something in the mainstream. It kind of, you not attach yourself so as much, but as in like you look up to him a bit more because you feel like you said, he looks like me.
And you can relate because you're like, oh wow, like he must come from a family like mine, or he must eat like, and I know it sounds really kind of like silly, but you're like, oh, he must eat the same food I do, or like whatever the case might be. And I think that like familiarity is brilliant to see, but also like, let's be real about what you're doing, which is you set a precedent, which is actually you like a Singh can do it. Like someone from our community can do it, and you don't like, and you can keep your gears and you can keep your tradition and everything else. So no, as I've said, proverbial hats off to you. I think it's brilliant. So how has boxing impacted your personal journey with Sikhi?
There's two things. So, my Sikhi has helped my boxing. So I wouldn't say my boxing has helped my Sikhi because, I mean, it's probably true, but from the way I look at it, like my Sikhi, you know, where we come from, who we are, and the simple fact that I want to represent my Qawm, that helps me box. That helps me, keeps me motivated. When I go to gyms which are predominantly English or like, you know, travelers, a lot of travelers, families, Irish traveling families that do boxing, and I'm the only thing there, and they show me respect. You know, because you hold your own and you stand your ground and you fight and you do what you got to do to the best of your ability. That is what keeps me going. I'm the only Singh who's doing it at the moment. You know, there's a couple of amateurs now who have come. My Sikhi keeps me going. My appearance is different from the average person. Like I said, it's what keeps me going. It makes me who I am. I'm not saying I'm God's gift, but it's me. There's no other. When I was growing up, there weren't no Punjabis in boxing, especially with Singhs. Let alone professionals. There was none in the amateurs. There was none in my school. You know, when I was in school, there was only me and my older cousin, Tarzan, is that my brother. There was only two of us in the whole school. My Sikhi has helped me in a lot of my life. When it comes to the beard, well, yeah, I mean, I was only young, so when I was obviously 12, 13, I didn't have a beard, so it didn't affect me. But as I was growing older, I was thinking, shit, because even the smallest bit of facial hair, you would have to, the doctor before the fight would make you shave. And it's mad because this doesn't occur in any other martial art or full contact sport. You know, even in professional boxing, you're allowed a beard. But it was just in amateur boxing throughout the world. So Olympics, Commonwealth Games, World Championship, local boxing, internationally, whatever, you're not allowed to keep a beard, even like the smallest bit of hair. I wasn't actually the main guy who done it. So Lions MMA from Midlands, I think they are, but they're all over the country. They sort of started it. But they needed a case study of like a Sikh fighter, but there wasn't none. So I was kind of the case study. We fought it. There was a few other people involved, and then we got the rule overturned. And since then, we've seen quite a few young up and they coming into boxing.
I just wanted to go back a little bit, just for people who perhaps don't understand the reasoning behind this rule. Why was it implemented in the first place? Like, and why is it also limited to just amateur boxing?
So why limit to amateur boxing? Because amateur boxing is probably the oldest body of martial arts. So like if you take cage fighting, for example, like UFC, that's been about 10, 15 years ago. Amateur boxing, the organization was formed like, say, probably 100 years ago, 70 odd years ago. But this rule is back then. It's not a recent rule. It's just been from then. It's been carried on. And no one really contested it because, like I said, there was no one to contest it. And it didn't affect like gurdwara, they don't mind shaving, you know. But for us, it's a big deal. So it wasn't so much that it was to keep Sikhs out of sport boxing. It was just that it was carried on. No one thought twice about it. It was just something that was always there. And the rules they gave weren't really clear. So, you know, they could say it would hide cuts. Believe it or not, they said it could cushion the impact of punches. But yeah, we got it overturned, and you know, it's history now. Hopefully, we're looking to get it done in the rest of the world.
No, that's awesome. I just find it a bit confusing. Well, it makes sense now that you've explained, but I found it confusing why it was just amateur boxing and not professional boxing.
Yeah, you know, it didn't really make sense, but you have to look at the body of boxing. You know, when these rules were made, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago, 70 odd years ago, where, you know, UFC or cage fighting, the bodies were only 5, 10 years old.
On a personal basis, do you think that having your beard gives you a mental edge over your opponent in the ring?
Don't know if it gives me an edge in the ring, you know, that sort of, but I know what you're saying, because a few people said to me, you know, I was doing an interview for an IFL TV, a boxing channel, and they were like, you know, you look quite scary, but you're a really nice guy. I was like, you know what, I can't help the look. So I guess you're right, but I mean, none of my opponents have come up to me and said, you know what, you look scary with a beard. It's just not something that happens. But I get where you're coming from. It's probably true, you know what I mean? Especially me, where I keep my beard quite like plump and it's like quite rough, my beard probably adds to the, like, you know, the like rough look kind of thing. But one of my interviews, they actually call me the someone commented on my IFL video, was like, he looks like the Sikh Kimbo Slice. The Punjabi, so they actually call me the Punjabi Kimbo Slice on a couple of my interviews. But yeah, I guess so.
I like that. But like, so do you feel like a difference when you fought with your gurdwara and like different without it? Do you feel like it, not necessarily the edge, but it gives you that kind of like, you know what, like I'm not just representing myself.
Yeah, it does. It probably does. Because all year round, I've got a beard, for example. Say, for instance, right now, today, all year round, I've got a beard, and say for my fight, I had to shave. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you know, my next professional fight, even though it's not going to happen, I have to shave my beard. I'm going to feel odd walking into the ring because I have to, all year round, I've got a beard. I've been training, I'm sparring, doing normal stuff with the beard. Now, all of a sudden, I'm fighting my fight and I've got to shave. So it does mentally affect the person. You know, mentally, it takes a toll on you. So when you've got a dada, you know, you feel like I keep it like loose and rough, and I like it because it's a reflection of me. So yeah, I mean, I think it does give me an edge mentally for sure.
Well, the only reason I'm quite particular about that is because I guess there's a lot of young Sikh men growing up in the UK, just like yourself and I. At some point in time, you kind of go through a bit of like a identity crisis, so to speak, where you're like, well, I don't actually fit in with everyone else. Like, I'm obviously different. Like, I look different. We eat different. Like, everything about us is different. And I feel like a lot of the time there's this clash between identities and trying to kind of fit in and trying to be yourself. And I think the importance, like, I got to admit, like, I'm not trying to like massage your ego or anything because you're on the podcast or anything like that. But I feel like just seeing a Singh, whether or not it's you or anything, but in this case, it happens to be you. Seeing a Singh in the ring, doing what, like, whether you're winning or losing, to be honest, is immaterial. But the fact that you're there and you're doing what you're doing, like for me as like a 30-year-old dude, is like, damn, that's impressive. So I can imagine for someone who's like 13, 14, like I genuinely it would have been a game changer when I was growing up. If like at the age of 15, I saw a Singh boxing, I'd have been like, fucking hell, like for real.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. You know, growing up, that's what I'm saying. We lack a role model in mainstream media. And I remember when Great Khali come about from WWE, and he wasn't necessarily a Singh. You know, obviously he's a Singh, but isn't the appearance wise. I was like proper. Everyone was, all the up and was going mad about it because there's Great Khali. He's from Punjab. He's from where I'm from. You know, he's not too far from where I'm. And that was obviously in WWE. So imagine we see a footballer tomorrow who's a Singh, or you know, a tennis player who's a Singh, and who's not just a Singh, but he's attached to his roots, and he talks about where he comes from and who he is and everything like that. You know, a young kid, like I mentioned, he would feel a lot more. He might not know the person. I didn't know Great Khali, but I felt a certain type of way about him. I was a bit more attached to him than any other wrestler, if that makes sense. You know, he wasn't my favorite wrestler, but like you said, he might eat the same food as me.
Yeah, but you relate to them, right? And so it's exactly what you're saying, which is with like Great Khali, you can relate to that person. In this case, a lot of people will look like you and they will automatically identify with that. But with like, say, for instance, Great Khali, it's the language, it's the culture, it's the food, for argument's sake. Just then diving deeper into what you're doing at the moment. What is it in particular then, besides obviously your family history, that made you want to progress in boxing rather than anything else? Was it just the competitive side of it?
Probably, yeah. Because boxing, I'm not just saying this because I'm a boxer, but I think, you know, and from, you know, you speak to, I know a lot of Punjabis do wrestling, you know, there's a lot from Midlands that are really good wrestlers, but they would all say, you could speak, and they would all say boxing is the hardest sport in the world. Again, it comes down to opinion and whether you agree or whether I agree. It's a different story, but a lot of people do say that. And so one was obviously a major factor with my family that, you know, they were into boxing. So when I was growing up, boxing was kind of all around me. That was one reason. And another reason was the competitive side of it. You know, it's more in there in the media. It's more, obviously now there's quite a few, like, you know, UFC is quite big, but say 10, 15 years ago, UFC was quite non-existent. It was always boxing. Boxing's always been the biggest fighting sport. It still is today. The biggest fighting sport in the world. So that was probably my reason more than anything as well.
Fair. And just because you've mentioned UFC, is there any particular reason why you didn't decide to go down that route rather than like boxing?
Like I said, when I was growing up, it was always boxing. So I was always a stand-up fighter, and my body. So my dad used to wrestle. So he was a freestyle wrestler. So not a WWE, like actual freestyle wrestling. So he used to wrestle like properly. I used to go with him every now and then. You know, a lot of the Eastern Europeans are like Iran, Iraq, Russians. They're into wrestling. So I used to go and I used to wrestle in a kids class and that. But my body type was always suited to boxing. I was tall. So boxing was always ideal for me. And maybe like if I was born, say, today and I started when I was 10 years old in 2030, for example, I might have done UFC because there might have been more clubs, but there wasn't no opportunity to do UFC when I was growing up. Boxing was always the biggest thing. And I don't regret it, to be honest. I love boxing. Boxing, it's made me what I am.
No, fair enough. I completely respect that. Just then diving a bit deeper into what your day-to-day training involves, so to speak. Obviously, at the moment, everything's in lockdown, but let's say if it was like a normal situation, what's your routine? And does that change if you've got a fight coming up?
Yeah, so thankfully, professional athletes, so boxers, footballers, whatever, they're still allowed to train. So my gym's still open. So in that sense, it's kind of a bit of normality for me. I'd wake up around 6:30. I usually do my BARD, and then I will have a cup of coffee and about 25 badam almonds. And then I'll go to my gym, which is about half an hour, 45 minutes away. We'll train. I'll do like a 2-hour boxing session. So in the morning, it's always boxing sessions. That includes sparring, pads, bags, that kind of stuff, circuit training, but all boxing. I'll come back for about 11ish, have breakfast. I'll either do a bit of work for my dad or I'll just chill out, and then I'll have my second session. So strength and conditioning, which would be around, afternoon time, 3-4 o'clock. That's usually an hour long. That's like weight, jumps, and, just basic strength training. Or I would do a run. I run up to about 5, on average between 3 to about 7 miles. I never do less than 3 miles, and I never do more than 7. It varies, obviously, depending what I'm running for, how long till fight night. And then I play football as well once or twice a week. I shouldn't be playing football because a lot of injuries. 5-star football, when it's like friendly, it's a bit more, relaxed, there's a bit less injuries. And it's very good fun football. I think football is unbelievable. It's a good laugh when you're with your friends and family and whatever. I play football twice a week. But yeah, most of my training consists of just like boxing stuff, weight training, that kind of stuff. When it comes to fight night, we box. To me, my training's always the same. We might change up what we do. So, for example, rather than doing 10 rounds on the bags, we're only going to do 4 rounds. For example, that's just an example. But my training largely stays the same. I do a lot of road work, do a lot of sprinting, and obviously boxing.
Fair. Sounds intense. So do you, in terms of your day-to-day training and then your running, is that literally every day?
I don't run every day, no. So running, I will run about 3 to 4 times a week max. So luckily we mix it up. Sometimes it might just be a 3-mile run, quite as fast as I can, and then do 10 sprints. So that will be my running for the day. It just depends. And obviously, when I've had a fight yesterday, I had my fight yesterday, for example, I'd have a couple of weeks off. But in the couple of weeks, I always train, I don't never not train. Even if I go on holiday, I'll always take my training. I was going to India. I was waking up at 4 o'clock because obviously in India it's different. In the bend, everyone wakes up early. So I'd wake up at 4 o'clock with my chacha and that, and I would run. I would run at 4:30 in the morning because it was nice. It was nice and peaceful. It's like 4 o'clock in India. It's like 8 o'clock here in London. So I always train. I'm always training. Or in the gym, or you don't even need a gym. You can train at home. You can do everything you want at home. You go for a run and you can do your press up, down the back, kind of whatever. So yeah, I'm always training. I'm never really not training.
Fair. Just carrying on then with your boxing, I was watching an interview the other day, well, actually yesterday, just in prep for this, and in the interview it described you as fighting ferociously. And I love the description because the guy put so much emphasis into it. More importantly, what I wanted to get to is do you think you have a particular style, or do you train in a particular way, or is that perhaps more of just a mindset? You're just you've got a job to do, you're in the ring, you just want to get it over and done with?
It's both. So like I said, I'm a tall fighter, I'm big for my weight. So I'm taught to be a boxer, keep it long, work my long shots because I've got quick hands and I've got good footwork. I'm told to box, I can be the best boxer in the world, and not best boxer in the world in that sense, but if I stick to my craft and do what I'm good at, which is keep it long, box, pick and move, play it smart. However, I've got that thing in me, and I don't really know what it is. Sometimes where you want to fight, you want to tear up, and I love it. You get a lot of fighters who they're good boxers, but when the going gets tough, sometimes and they get caught, they bottle it. But I'm not bigging myself up, Bucky, Abjana, everything comes on top one day or another. But I love a fight as well, so it's not always a good thing because if you play it smart, like Floyd Mayweather, why is he the best ever? Because he always play. He never got caught and he never got got caught in a tear up or like doing what he's not good at. He always done what he was good at. But sometimes, I don't know if it's that Punjabi thing in me where, we want to have a fight, but it's not always a good thing. But, like I said, we live and learn, and like it's part of who I am. It's part of my fighting game. But I am a boxer. I'm a good technical boxer. I do focus on the technical side of my boxing and training. But like I said, we do get, when you're in a fight, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, like Mike Tyson said.
Yeah, true that. I think one thing that I can perhaps summarize from just the discussion that we've had is that I think you're unapologetic about who you are, and you're very confident about, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm here to do it. And I think that's quite, it's positive and it's reassuring to see in someone, especially so young, who's getting into something so competitive. Like, I think it's brilliant.
Definitely. Listen, bro, where I'm from, how I've been raised is we wear a heart on our sleeve. Nicely done, and we never will be. Like I said, listen, people, yourself included, just people will automatically assume we're a certain type of way, judging by how we look. But it's no problem. I don't care. You know what I mean? And I'm always respectful. I'm very polite to everybody, and that's the way I want to be. Even in gyms, everyone knows me, and they'll always say, Inder's genuinely a really polite kid. But like I said, I'm unapologetically, I am what I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I just wanted to get into kind of your mindset, so to speak. So obviously with competitive sport, you have the prospect of winning or losing, obviously, that's your entire kind of being, so to speak. And obviously having to deal with a loss, or having to deal with literally having like your head kicked in. What do you do, and how do you keep yourself in the right kind of frame of mind? Because like, for argument's sake, I've had past experiences in competitive like karate fights and stuff, obviously nowhere near on a level like yourself. And like you'll lose the fight or whatever, and you're just like, oh man, I thought I knew it, or whatever. Like, you obviously go through your, like, however it works. So yeah, I just wanted to get inside your mind in terms of, obviously with boxing, and obviously it's on a professional level, there's a lot on the line, you're putting loads of training into it. Like, how do you keep your mind right in that you're having to deal with obviously the prospect of winning or losing?
Okay, so like I said, my last fight I actually lost, and a lot of people said to me, Inder, you shouldn't have taken that fight because he was a bit more experienced than you, older than you, and you didn't need to take it. It was too early on in your career. But I still took it, and regardless, I lost. But it wasn't because I took the fight, because I would never not take a fight or avoid a fight because I feel like I'm scared. I'm here not to just make numbers. A lot of fighters, they have fabricated records. They box bums. They'll have 10, 12 fights and they'll win them all. But it's not the same thing as boxing people who are there to win. I lost my last fight, but I broke my nose, and people have said to me, Inder, you showed so much heart in that fight. There was a point when I couldn't see and breathe. I broke my nose in the second round when I got headbutted. But I still was in there. I didn't give up. They were saying to me, you want to pull out? And I said, no, don't ever pull me out. Unless I get knocked out and I'm unconscious, and that's a different story. But don't ever pull me out or throw the towel in. But that's part of the fight game. Growing as an amateur, I've been to 3 national finals, but I never actually won one because I box. I'm not saying, I'm not using the playing the race card. I would never do that. But every single time people have said to me, Inder, you won that fight. One time, boxed a kid from the Army and Navy boxing team, and his parents and his coaches just come up to me and said, you know what, you won that fight. I don't know what the judges were looking at. So for me, it's a minor setback that I know that it was my fault. I might have taken the fight too easy. I trained my ass off, I was in the best shape of my life. But I think mentally I overlooked my opponent. But that's a lesson that I have to learn for myself. And it's how I come back. I can't talk about wanting to represent the calm and be this person. But I've had one loss, and all of a sudden I've packed it in, and I've no longer doing boxing. I've stopped. That's not who I am. Like I said, it's a tough lesson for me to learn, but I'm going to come back from it, and I'm going to show everyone, that I'm here not to just make numbers up or just to do it for Instagram or, a bit of fame in my local area. I'm here to do it because I know I can go a certain type of way. And even if I can't, I will try my best and do what I can to the very best of my ability. And when it comes to like walking to fight and knowing you could lose and all the training, that's not a problem. That's the game that we're in. It's a warrior sport, winning or losing is part of life. As long as an individual gives it their best, and I will always give it my best. I might not be good enough, I might not be strong enough or whatever, but I'll always give it my best, and no one can say, Inder, you know what, you didn't give it your best. And that's what it's about for me.
Touche. I respect that. There was a couple of things in there that piqued my interest. One in particular was the headbutt. What is the legality around that, and like how what happened?
Okay, so we'll go for the fight. So the first round, I was picking him off. I scored I was landing some heavy shots. And that was the first round. And my coach said to me, you know what, if it carries on like this, then you'll probably stop him in another 2 or 3 rounds. And I knew that. And when, obviously, you know, like I said, you know, I thought, yeah, you know what, big fight, I'm going to stop him another 2 or 3 rounds. I thought, yeah, let me try fight him. If I stuck to my boxing, I would have, you know, just picked him off and carried on. I probably would have beat him. Even if, you know, knockout or not, I would have beat him. But I thought, you know what, I could really hurt this guy. So I stood there and started planting my feet, tried trade. And what he did, you know, listen, it was intentional or not intentional, you know, only he knows. But he headbutted me and I broke my nose. And like with that, it's like if I accidentally elbow you, for example, oh, sorry, mate, I didn't realise. I knew full well what I was doing, but I can disguise it. But if I do it 2 or 3 times, then the referee's going to say, wait, hold up, point deducted, headbutted me, broke my nose. And yeah, from then, like I said, it was difficult because you can't breathe, you can't see. And it was the first time I ever broke my nose, so I didn't really know how to deal with it. But still, I only lost by a couple rounds. I stayed in there throughout the whole fight. Like I said, whether he done it intentionally or not, he's not going to say, you know what, I intentionally headbutted Inder. But it's just one of them ones where, you know, like, oh yeah, he done what he had to do kind of thing.
There's one question that I have to ask because I can imagine my mom absolutely hitting the roof if I was in your position. What does your mom say about all of this?
She doesn't really mind too much. Like I said, I'm from a family, like we've all been boxing, obviously my dad, my whatever. So it's kind of normal. That's the thing, you know, it's normal for my household.
Yeah.
Boxing, you know, a lot of Punjabi families, it's like, they look at boxing and think, no, mere munde da muh kharab hoya na, or but listen, the whole world is boxing. They're not all broken faces and broken noses, and like, you know, we have to kind of, I'm not obviously digging at you, but as in people have this image where they watch the Rocky films and think that's what boxing is, but that's not boxing. That's a film, you know. But yeah, it's normal kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's not really a big deal.
Fair. I can imagine, especially as you said, with the family history that you've got, like it would obviously be second nature. Yeah. Also, just going back to what you were saying about the fight you had with the Army Navy dude, do you feel like there have been glass ceilings, so to speak, that you've had to break through or work around?
Definitely. I remember I boxed once and it was my first competition after the beard ban was overturned. So it was a big thing because even like the average gurdwara guy, they was all coming, everyone had to shave, and you know, beards are like a fashionable thing as well now. So they was all coming out, you know what, thank you, bro, because I was on BBC, so it was a massive thing. It's a massive rule. Every boxer hated shaving. You know, imagine everyone has a beard and all of a sudden when you have to fight, you have to shave. Everybody hated it. And I boxed this guy and I've never had a point deducted from my hair. I've never had a referee warn me about my hair. You know, because I tuck it in, and even though obviously my God's quite long, but when I tuck it in, it's not a problem. You can't really see it. And I've got to a final, I've boxed a GB boy, and third round, my hair sort of come loose just a little bit. So I imagine the back of my neck, about an inch from my head. So it wasn't long, about a couple of inches. And the referee didn't even warn me. He goes straight point deducted. I thought, no way. Tough fight. It was a 50-50 fight against a GB kid who was like, went to the Youth Olympics, and he was a very decorated amateur, and it was a big fight. Everyone was there watching it, blah, blah, blah. Last round, he deducted a point, not even given a warning. He didn't give me a warning. You know, he didn't say, oh, if your hair comes undone again, I'm going to deduct point. He just gave me a straight point deduction. I thought, nah, no way. And my coach, obviously, he was in Italian. He was like, you know what, referee? He swore that you're a mug. He's like, you done that intentionally. There was no reason for you to, even if my hair did come all the way loose, it's the last round. You've got a minute and a half left of the round, but it didn't even come loose. And that was just after the beard ban. So like I said, I can't tell you that maybe the guy saw it and thought, you know what, this guy was the one that overturned the beard rule, which us amateur boxing association has had for so many years. I don't know, but I've definitely encountered glass ceilings, definitely, without a doubt.
Again, the only reason I ask is because I could have assumed that there would have been, just like in pretty much anywhere, there are glass ceilings to get through. And again, like as we've kind of been saying throughout this podcast, obviously there's not been many, well, there's hardly been any Sikh boxers, etc. So these glass ceilings are kind of like new, so to speak. And so it's always interesting to find out what and how that actually works out. Now, I can imagine you take a lot of inspiration from your family, especially coming from such a highly decorated background. But I would love to know who else, obviously, you look up to. Are there any particular role models that you've got that you look up to?
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so I'm going to answer the question in 2 parts. First part is going to be out of boxing. So someone like Bhagat Singh, I've always, from a young age, I was like 16 and my phone case, when custom phone cases first come out, I had a Bhagat Singh phone case. So it was always Bhagat Singh, someone who done something. And it wasn't because who he was, but someone who'd done something at such a young age and left a legacy, good or bad. Everybody has an opinion about everyone. You know, I don't like him, you don't like him, or you love him and I hate him or whatever. But someone like Bhagat Singh, from a young age, I was always, you know, looking up to him. You know, he'd done something from such a young age and he left a legacy. And that's what I wanted to do too. You know, I'm not a freedom fighter, obviously, and I'm not here to fight whatever, a war against no government. But in my field, I want to leave a legacy. And that's what Bhagat Singh did. You know, like I said, we come from a Qawm of Shaheeds, you know, Sant Janara Singh Ji, what they did as well. You know, these are the people I look up to. But when it comes to boxing, one of my all-time favorite fighters, I think most boxers, their favorite fighter is Mike Tyson. You know, he come from nothing. He done so much, and you know, his career and his mindset. You know, he was an animal, and that was inspiring. You know, like he might, like I said, some people say he was rubbish. Some people say he was overrated. Some people say he was the best ever. But his mindset and his thought process and how his mentality before getting into the ring, it shows, you know, that guy was honestly an animal, and people would lose before they even got into the ring. And that is someone that will always inspire me.
Those last few words that you've just said, I absolutely love, because I think that encapsulates actually the mentality that I think you've adopted as well. Like, we've been talking about how, like, I know we've been talking about loads of like random things, like how do you feel when you get in the ring with your beard, etc., or whatever. But I think there's like an unapologetic comfort in yourself that I think is in by default we're kind of victorious, because you're like, yeah, like I know what I'm doing, like I'm going to do it. And I think that, just like as you were saying, before you even step in the ring, those people had lost. I think similarly, I think that's the kind of vibe that I've got just from the conversation we've had.
I hope so. You know, like I said, I'm not bigging myself up, but I'll always be polite. I'll always, you know, like they say, the loudest in the room is always the weakest in the room. So, you know, I go to the gym, for example. I just get on with it. I get along with everyone. I enjoy talking to them. When people talk to me, when I've got to train, I've got to train. When I've got to talk, I'll talk to everybody. You know, everybody's my friend. I don't have no personal enmity against anybody. But you got to be headstrong, and being a fighter. Sometimes you have no option to be headstrong. That's your only option. So you begin to adopt it into your everyday life.
No, definitely. Just then, there's a couple of questions that I just want to wrap up with. One in particular is, where do you see yourself going, and where perhaps do you see yourself in like 5 or 10 years?
Okay, so right. So where do I see myself going? In boxing, I believe I can go far. Like I said, the people I spar with, people I train with, you know, they wouldn't put so much time, they wouldn't invest so much time and effort into me if I couldn't. You know, the world's your oyster. When you're young and you're hungry, you have the potential and a possibility to do whatever you want. You know, it just takes a bit of dedication, a bit of sacrifice and stuff. And I do see myself winning a British title, European title, maybe even a world title. You know, it's a massive thing, and no no Indian has ever done it. You know, whatever going on with the farmers, Indian, Punjabi. But I've always said to people, Punjabi, you know, see my interviews on Punjabi, you know, Punjabi as God will say Punjabi, but I'll be the first to ever do it. So I hope I can go all the way. But Baki, wherever God keeps me, He'll keep me. But I do believe, you know, Rab Meher Kare, I can do something. You know, I can get to a good level in boxing. In 10 years, I'll be 34. I'll be either retired or like coming up to retirement. And yeah, I don't know, other than boxing, that's all my life is at the moment. So I don't really know what else to say.
At that point of retirement, what would you like to have achieved in your boxing career? Like, let's say you could write, like, let's say this was a movie script and you could literally write your life out for the next 10 years. What would you make sure was included in those 10 years?
Well, if I could write my own script, a world champion, I'd have definitely put down, you know, but obviously doing it the proper way, you know, so British champion, a European, Commonwealth, whatever, that kind of stuff, and then a world champion. And then I've always wanted to help out my people in Punjab, our people in Punjab. So I'd want to do a lot of charity work, you know, coming up with retirement, build a platform, and then do whatever I can to help people in Punjab. So that for me is a really big thing as well, you know, massive thing. I would want to help my people in Punjab for sure. Maybe build up whatever, you know, in whatever I can, you know, building gyms, they're giving them the opportunity. Because one of my interviews, they was asking me, they was like, Sikh people, they claim themselves to be a warrior race and whatever, but why don't we see athletes, boxers? And it got me thinking, but I realized there were so many reasons as to why. And one of the reasons is there's no opportunity there for them. A boxing gym isn't expensive. All you need is a pair of gloves and a boxing bag. These things are not expensive, but there's nothing in India. And that comes from a variety of reasons, Jyotiraj Siva Choya, even after, up until sort of like 95, 96, people didn't really have time to box. They had other things on their mind. We had other things going on in Punjab. Boxing was the last of people's concern, or sports. Obviously now we're kind of finding our feet again as a people. We are seeing, young in the diaspora, young Punjabis be there in mainstream, still bangles. Even Sidhu Musa, I know he did Punjabi music, but he's kind of hit like the wider public. Jeet Dosanjh, you got loads of people, you got like models and whatever. We're slowly getting, slow and steady. We're only a small people, but I would definitely like to help our people out in Punjab. Definitely that would definitely be included in my script.
No, I respect that. I definitely. You can't knock that one. Now, I've followed you personally on Instagram for quite a while, and you post about food all the time, yeah? And I guess the fun of doing these podcasts is that I get the ability to talk about topics ranging from like philosophy to history to sport to God knows what. Today, obviously, we get the pleasure to talk about food, something that I absolutely love. Now, just to kind of throw a bit of a fun question out there, what is like your favorite, like obviously because you train a lot, you obviously must you're going to have to eat a lot. What is like your favorite food? Like if you had if you could pick one thing and you were like, this is all I'm gonna eat for the rest of my life, what would it be?
It's a hard question because I literally love food as well myself. So I eat meat,
okay,
so
how about like the top three?
Fan,
if you could pick like three dishes, I could live off.
Burgers, burgers. I can't go wrong with burgers. I love burgers. Burger and chips is the best meal in the world, but a good, not McDonald's or something, like a genuine proper burger and chips and a milkshake is got to be the best meal in the world. But again, like a grilled chicken and like a kebab, for example, grilled chicken shish with rice, that's another meal you cannot go wrong. It's healthy, it's lovable. And then obviously I'd have to keep it Punjabi as well, like a Punjabi meat dish is got to be needed too. I sound like a fat idiot, but I love food. But for me, anything, honestly, anything, I'll eat it. But I don't eat sweets and like sugary foods, just food, genuine food I love.
Is that because you don't have a sweet tooth per se, or just because of your training?
I don't really have a sweet tooth. Nah. From a young age, I've never, Indian sweets and all of that kind of stuff I've never really eaten. The only thing I do have is a milkshake, is that once or twice a week, but that's my like favorite. Like I love milkshakes. But no, I've never really had a sweet tooth.
You're a lucky man. Like I wish I didn't like sweet things. It's probably the bane of like my life, really. But no, touche. It probably explains also why you're so like healthy, right? Like you're not caning all that sugar. Well, I have to wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and I hope that we see you one day on the world stage. Unfortunately, we're now at the end of episode 9 of the Sorch podcast. So I have to say thank you to our guest Inder Singh Bassi, and also thank you to everyone who's listening. If you enjoy it, why not check us out on Patreon, Instagram or Twitter.